The council chamber was the largest room Ambassador Alina Vasquez had ever seen. It stretched out like a massive sphere, with no visible floor or ceiling. 47 different alien species floated in their special pods, each one designed for their unique biology. Some needed extreme heat, others needed crushing cold. Some breathed methane, others absorbed radiation. The technology required to keep them all alive in one space was beyond anything humanity had built. Alina stood on a small platform in the center of it all. Her dark blue diplomatic uniform felt suddenly very plain. Around her, holographic displays showed Earth, Mars, the human colonies, and detailed reports on everything humanity had accomplished in the past 2 centuries. To her, it looked impressive. To the beings watching her, it apparently looked like a joke. The Zarthon Primarch spoke first. It was a being made of pure, crystalline energy, shifting colors as it communicated through the translation system. Its voice came through as cold and ancient. Humanity wishes to join the Galactic Council. Let us review their credentials. The massive displays changed, showing humanity's statistics in harsh detail. 220 years of spaceflight. Control of only 1 star system. Average lifespan of 120 years. Population still recovering from a plague that had nearly destroyed them 80 years ago. 23 colonies, most of them small. Technology level rated as developing in 17 categories. The Krell. Ambassador made a sound that the translator turned into laughter. The Krell looked like a massive lobster. The lobster was the size of a truck and covered in armor plates that could stop laser fire. Chemical rockets, it said, its voice bubbling with amusement. They still use chemical rockets for most of their transport. My species abandoned such primitive methods 4,000 years ago. More laughter rippled through the chamber. Alina kept her face neutral. She had expected this. The briefings had warned her. But knowing it was coming didn't make it easier to stand here and take it. An ether floated closer to examine the displays. The ether looked like living silk, beautiful and graceful, moving through the air like smoke. They still sleep, it said. Its voice like wind chimes. 1/3 of their existence spent in unconsciousness. How inefficient. How primitive. Our species evolved past such needs millennia ago. Look at their history, another voice called out. Alina couldn't identify which species it came from. War after war. Conflict. Violence. They nearly destroyed themselves 6 times before they even left their planet. And once in space, they fought over resources in their own system for 20 years. The Terminus Collective displayed images from human history. Battles, weapons, cities burning. The collective was a group mind, thousands of connected beings sharing one consciousness. Its voice was like a chorus. Emotion-based decision-making. Irrational behavior patterns. Inefficient resource allocation driven by concepts like pride and revenge. They are dangerous to themselves and would be dangerous to this council. Lena clenched her hands behind her back. She kept breathing steadily. Stay calm. Stay professional. Don't give them the satisfaction. The Primarch's energy form pulsed brighter. The council has reviewed humanity's petition. The decision is unanimous. It paused, and Alina could feel the weight of judgment coming. Humanity is denied membership. You may petition again in 500 years. Once your species has matured beyond its violent infancy and developed the stability required for civilized society. Round the chamber, various species made sounds of agreement. Some were already turning away, their attention moving on to other matters. To them, this was already over. Humanity was dismissed. This session is concluded, the Primarch announced. Ambassador Vasquez, you are dismissed. But Alina didn't move. She stood at the podium, hands still clasped behind her back. A small smile touched her lips. Not angry, not defeated. Just waiting, the Primarch's form flickered with what might have been confusion. Ambassador, you are dismissed. Leave the chamber. I will, Alina said calmly. As soon as we're finished, we are finished. The decision has been made. You've made a decision, Alina agreed. But you haven't asked the right question yet. Silence fell across the chamber. Several species who had been turning away stopped. The Krell ambassador's eye stalks swiveled back toward her. The ether that had been drifting toward the exit paused in midair. The Primarch's energy crackled with irritation. What question, human? Elena activated her personal display. A new star map appeared, showing known space. You've listed our weaknesses. You've cataloged our failures. You've compared us to your own species and found us wanting. She highlighted different regions of the map. But you haven't asked what we've actually accomplished. We just reviewed your accomplishments, the Krell said. They were unimpressive. You reviewed our numbers, Elena corrected. But you didn't compare them properly? The Zarthon took 4,000 years to leave their home system after developing spaceflight capability. The Krell took 2,800. The Ether needed 1,500 years. She pulled up the data, displaying it for everyone to see. Humanity did it in 180 years. A few species shifted uncomfortably. The Primarch's colors swirled faster. Coincidence, luck? Your system's layout was favorable. 23 colonies in 40 years, Elena continued. After a plague killed 40% of our species, we rebuilt our entire civilization in 3 decades. Every species in this chamber had patron races who gave them technology. The Krell were uplifted by the ancestors. The Ether inherited technology from the precursors. Even the Terminus Collective was built on ancient computational networks they discovered. She looked around the chamber. Humanity did it alone. No patrons. No inherited technology, no help. Just us figuring it out as we went. Speed born from recklessness, the Terminus Collective stated. Expansion without wisdom. This proves our point about your dangerous nature. Then a new voice spoke. It was quiet, but every species in the chamber immediately fell silent. The Velkari observer rarely spoke. The Velkari were ancient, even by galactic standards. They had been watching and recording for so long that some species considered them more legend than real. The observer looked almost like a human, but its skin was slightly translucent, and its eyes were completely black. What drives this urgency? It asked simply. Elena's expression changed. The professional diplomat's mask cracked slightly, showing something harder underneath. Something that had survived real darkness and come out the other side. Because we know something you've all forgotten, she said quietly. We know what it means to be prey, the chamber erupted. Voices shouted in a dozen languages. The translator struggled to keep up. The species present were the apex of their worlds, the top of their evolutionary chains. The suggestion that they had forgotten being prey was insulting at best, but Elena wasn't done. She pulled up files. Classified council records. Records that were thousands of years old and buried under layers of security. Records about something called the DEVOURS. And suddenly, the chamber wasn't laughing anymore. The word devourers hung in the air like poison. Elena watched as the various species reacted. Some went very still. Others made agitated movements. The Krell ambassador's armor plates shifted nervously. Even the Primarch's energy form dimmed slightly. Those records are classified, the Primarch said, but its voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. They were classified, Elena corrected. Our cyber division is very good. When we applied for council membership, we wanted to know what we were joining. So we looked deeper than the welcome materials. She gestured at the files floating in the holographic display. The Devourers. An extragalactic threat that nearly destroyed the Council 7,000 years ago. A species that consumes entire worlds, leaving nothing behind. They were driven back at enormous cost. 42 species went extinct fighting them. Ancient history, the Terminus Collective said, but there was an edge to its chorus of voices. The threat was eliminated. The threat was pushed back, Elena said. There's a difference. According to your own records, the Devourers weren't destroyed. They were driven to the edge of the galaxy and beyond. Your strategists at the time concluded they would return eventually. Yeah? She looked around the chamber. When was the last time any of you reviewed the protocols for that return? When was the last time you tested your emergency response systems? Nobody answered. The silence was telling. Elena continued, her voice steady and calm. The The Zarthon haven't updated their defensive fleet formations in 2,000 years. The Krell military doctrine is based on engagements from 3,000 years ago. The Ether's tactical simulations use the same parameters they've used for millennia. She pulled up more data, showing military records from across the Council species. You've been safe for so long that you've forgotten how to prepare for real danger, and humanity remembers. The Primarch challenged. You've never faced anything like the Devourers. No, Alina agreed, but we faced extinction 80 years ago. The Cascade Plague. 40% of our species died in 18 months. Our infrastructure collapsed. Our governments fell. Our colonies were cut off with no support. She pulled up images from that dark time. Abandoned cities. Mass graves. The desperate faces of survivors. Logic said we were finished. Every model predicted complete extinction within 5 years. The chamber was absolutely silent now. Every being present was watching her. But we survived, Elena said. Not because we were smarter or stronger. We survived because we remembered what it meant to fight for existence. Every single human who lived through that plague knows what it's like to watch their world end. My daughter was 7 years old when she died. I held her while the fever took her. That was day 43 of the plague. Her voice didn't waver, but something in her eyes spoke of old pain, old rage, and old determination. I didn't have time to grieve. None of us did. I was a medical researcher, so I went back to the lab. I worked 20-hour days for 8 months straight. My team developed one of the vaccine components that finally stopped the plague. Not because we were geniuses, because we were desperate, because we had people we loved who were still alive, and we would do anything to keep them that way. The Velkari observer leaned forward slightly. This is why you expand so quickly. Why you build redundant systems. Why your military trains constantly, even in peacetime, yes, Elena said. Every human alive today either survived the plague or was born after it. We all grew up with the stories. We all know how close we came to extinction. So we prepare. We train. We build backup systems for our backup systems. We assume the worst-case scenario and then prepare for something worse than that. This is fear-based thinking, the Terminus Collective said. Inefficient. It wastes resources on unlikely scenarios. You call it fear? Alina replied. We call it respect for reality. The universe doesn't care about efficiency. It doesn't care about logic. It just is. And the species that survive are the ones who understand that safety is an illusion. You can prepare for danger, or you can become comfortable. But you can't do both. The Primarch's energy form swirled with complex colors. This still does not explain why humanity believes it deserves council membership. Lena smiled then, and it wasn't a friendly expression. I don't believe we deserve it. I believe you need us. That got reactions. Several species began talking at once. The Krell ambassador made a sound like grinding rocks. Need you? You've been in space for barely 2 centuries? We've built civilizations that span thousands of years. What could we possibly need from humans? Someone who remembers how to fight, Alina said simply. Really fight. Not simulations. Not theoretical scenarios. Not battles conducted according to acceptable doctrine and civilized rules. She pulled up data from her personal files. We've analyzed every major council military engagement in the past 3,000 years. Do you know what we found? She displayed patterns, tactical models, strategic approaches. You fight the same way every time. Different species have different styles, yes, but each species has become predictable. The Krell always prioritized defensive positions. The Ether always tried to achieve information superiority first. The Terminus always calculate the most efficient resource allocation. You've optimized yourselves into patterns. Patterns that work, the Krell said defensively. We've won our wars against opponents who follow similar patterns, Alina countered. What happens when you face an enemy that doesn't play by the rules? What happens when logic and efficiency aren't enough? She paused. What happens when the Devourers come back? The Primarch's energy flared bright. The Devourers are not returning. Long-range sensors have shown no sign of them for thousands of years. Wrong, the Valkyrie observer said quietly. Every eye in the chamber turned to the ancient being. It stood slowly. The human is correct. I had hoped to delay this revelation, but circumstances forced my hand. The observer's black eyes swept across the assembled species. The Devourers are returning. Long-range detection arrays have picked up disturbances at the galactic rim. The pattern matches the signatures from 7,000 years ago. The chamber erupted in chaos. Species were shouting, demanding details, calling for emergency sessions. The Primarch tried to restore order, but its voice was lost in the noise. The Valkyrie. Observer raised one hand and silence fell immediately. We have been monitoring the situation for 20 years. We have been preparing in secret, running simulations, developing strategies. Our best projections give the galaxy a 12% chance of survival if the Devourers return in force. 12%, the Krell said. That's better than I would have expected. It's worse than you think, Alina said. Everyone looked at her. We've run our own simulations. Based on the data we could gather about the Devourers and our analysis of current Council military capabilities, humanity's projections give the galaxy a 3% chance of survival. Now the chamber went dead silent. The difference between 12 and 3% was enormous. It was the difference between unlikely and nearly impossible. You're more pessimistic than our worst-case scenarios, the Terminus Collective said. Why? Because your models assume you'll adapt, Alina explained. They assume that when the threat appears, you'll change your tactics, innovate new strategies, break from your patterns. But your entire society is built on stability and tradition. You don't adapt quickly. You can't. It's not how your cultures work anymore. She pulled up comparative data. We've watched how you respond to smaller crises. Every response takes years to implement. Committees, debates, consensus building, it's all very civilized, very efficient in the long term, and completely useless in an emergency. And humanity would be different, the Primarch asked. Humanity would panic, Alina said bluntly. We'd argue and fight and probably make a dozen stupid decisions in the first week. But then we'd adapt. We'd try new things. We'd break rules and ignore protocols and throw out plans that weren't working. We'd be messy and inefficient and absolutely desperate. She looked around the chamber. And that 3% survival chance? That assumes we're part of the fight. We ran the numbers for what happens if humanity isn't involved. If we're not at the table, your 12% becomes 0.4%. The weight of that number settled over everyone present. Without humanity, the galaxy's chance of survival was almost zero. Elena's voice was quiet but clear. You don't need to like us. You don't need to approve of how we do things. But you need us to survive. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner we can get to work. The Primarch's energy form pulsed with colors Elena couldn't quite identify. Anger, maybe, or fear. You expect us to believe that humanity, with its 2 centuries of experience, is essential to galactic survival. This is arrogance. Then test us, Elena said immediately. You think we're arrogant? Prove it. Let your best tactical minds face a human team in a war game simulation. If we're really as inexperienced and primitive as you claim, your people will win easily. And then you can reject our petition with confidence. The Krell ambassador's eye stalks swiveled in what might have been interest. A simulation. What would be the parameters? Standard colony defense scenario, Alina suggested. Defending against an overwhelming invasion force? Your team against ours? If your people win, we leave, and don't come back for 500 years like you ordered. If we win, you at least consider that maybe we know something you don't. The various species began communicating among themselves. The Terminus Collective's voice rose above the others. This is acceptable. A demonstration of tactical capability would provide useful data. If humanity loses, it proves our assessment correct. If humanity wins through luck, we can analyze why. There is no downside. The Valkyrie observer nodded slowly. I support this proposal. Let us see what humanity can do. Very well, the Primarch said. We will reconvene in 24 hours. The Council will assemble its finest tactical minds. Humanity may bring whoever they wish, Alina smiled. We'll be ready. 24 hours later, the Council chamber had been reconfigured. The central platform now held a massive holographic battlefield. A colony world, small defensive fleet, limited ground forces, and an incoming invasion force 5 times larger than the defenders. It was the kind of scenario that appeared in military academies across the galaxy. Difficult, but winnable with proper strategy. The Council's team assembled first. The Krell War Master was a legendary figure, having studied military strategy for 300 years. Its shell was covered in medals and markings indicating dozens of successful campaigns. Next to it floated an ether tactical chorus. 5 individuals who had merged their consciousness into a single tactical mind. Their combined processing power could analyze thousands of scenarios simultaneously. Finally, the Terminus predictive engine materialized, specialized subset of the collective designed purely for military calculations. It could run 1 billion scenarios per second. The chamber buzzed with anticipation. Several species had sent observers. This was entertainment to some, but to others it was something more important. A chance to see if humanity really had something to offer, or if they were just talking. Then, the human team entered, and there was visible disappointment from some observers. 3 humans in simple military uniforms. No special equipment. No obvious augmentation. They looked incredibly ordinary compared to the alien tactical specialists. Colonel Marcus Webb led the group. He was in his 50s, with gray hair and a weathered face. He walked with a slight limp from an old injury. Next to him was Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a young woman who looked barely 30 years old, carrying a tablet and looking nervous. The third member was Lieutenant James Morrison, fresh-faced and young. Recently graduated from Mars Defense Academy, the Krell War Master made a bubbling sound that might have been laughter. This is humanity's best. An old soldier, a child, and a nervous academic. These are our people, Alina said calmly from her observation position. Begin when ready. Simulation started. Both teams had identical resources, identical starting positions, identical objectives. Defend the colony for as long as possible against the invasion force. Standard military doctrine said the colony could hold for maybe 6 hours with perfect tactics before being overwhelmed. The goal was to last as long as possible and take down as many enemy units as you could before losing. The Council team deployed immediately. Their movements were textbook perfect. The Krell War Master positioned the defensive fleet in optimal formation, creating overlapping fields of fire. The Ether Chorus coordinated ground forces with beautiful precision, every unit exactly where it needed to be. The Terminus engine calculated resource allocation down to the last bullet, ensuring maximum efficiency. It was like watching a master class in military strategy. The human team's approach seemed to be complete chaos. Colonel Webb split his fleet into 3 groups and sent them in completely different directions. Dr. Tanaka deployed ground forces to positions that made no tactical sense whatsoever. Lieutenant Morrison abandoned the colony's main defensive strongpoints and scattered troops across secondary locations. Observers began murmuring. Some laughed. This was going to be over quickly. The humans were making every mistake possible. The Council team pressed their advantage. Their fleet engaged the scattered human ships and destroyed them methodically. Their ground forces advanced on the poorly defended positions. By the 30-minute mark, it looked like a complete rout. The Council was winning in every measurable way. Then Colonel Webb did something strange. He sacrificed an entire battalion, sending them on what appeared to be a pointless attack that accomplished nothing except getting them killed. More laughter from the observers. The humans were panicking, making desperate moves. By the 47-minute mark, the Council's victory looked certain. They controlled orbital space. They were advancing on all fronts. The human defense was in shambles. The Krell War Master was already preparing its victory statement, then everything changed in 8 minutes. The destroyed human ships had launched hundreds of small drones before dying. Drones that had been drifting silently through the battlefield. now suddenly activating and swarming the Council fleet from behind. The poorly positioned ground forces revealed they had been setting up a network of hidden traps and ambush points. The Sacrifice Battalion had actually infiltrated deep into enemy lines and now attacked the Council's command and control center. The chaos had been a setup. Every mistake had been planned. Every sacrifice had been a piece on a board the Council team hadn't even known they were playing on. In 8 minutes of coordinated fury, the human team decapitated the enemy command structure, destroyed their supply lines, turned their own advancing troops into isolated groups that could be picked off, and created a cascading failure that collapsed the entire invasion force. The simulation ended. Colony defended. Invasion repelled. Human victory. The chamber was completely silent. The Krell Warmaster was staring at the tactical display as if it couldn't believe what it was seeing. The Ether Chorus had actually separated back into 5 individuals, breaking their merged consciousness from the shock. Even the Terminus engine had gone quiet, processing what had happened. Finally, the Krell spoke. "This is impossible. You violated 47 different tactical doctrines. The moves you made shouldn't have worked. They were illogical, wasteful, dangerous." Colonel Webb walked to the display. His limp seemed more pronounced now, like the stress of the simulation had tired him. But his voice was steady and hard. "Violated doctrines?" He pointed at the battlefield. "Your doctrines assume your enemy will fight fair. They assume both sides will follow the rules. They assume logic and efficiency matter." He looked at the War Master. "We don't have that luxury. Humanity fights enemies that want us dead and don't care about rules. So we learn to do everything possible to survive. That means fighting dirty. That means breaking rules. That means doing the impossible, because the logical approach gets you killed." Dr. Tanaka stepped forward, her nervousness gone now. "We spent 3 months studying you. Every species on the Council, every tactical approach you use, every pattern you fall into. You're predictable. All of you. The Krell always create defensive perimeters. The Ether always prioritize information gathering. The Terminus always optimize for efficiency. Once we knew your patterns, we could plan around them. But you couldn't have predicted our exact moves," the Ether Chorus protested. "We didn't need to," Lieutenant Morrison said. He was young, but his eyes were sharp. "We predicted your patterns. Then we created chaos. Chaos is unpredictable. You can't calculate it. You can't optimize for it. You can't counter it with logic because it doesn't follow logic. It just is. And while you were trying to figure out what we were doing, we were executing a plan that operated on completely different principles." The Primarch's energy form was swirling rapidly. This was one simulation. One scenario. "Run it again," Alina said immediately. "Different scenario. We'll win again. Because this isn't about one clever trick. It's about a fundamental difference in how we approach problems." "The humans are correct," the Valkyrie observer said quietly. "I have reviewed the simulation data. Every move they made appeared to be wrong according to established military theory. But those theories assume both sides are trying to win through efficient resource use and optimal positioning. The humans were never trying to win that way. They were trying to break the game itself. Create conditions where traditional tactics became irrelevant." The observer looked at Alina. "This is how you survive the plague. This is how you advance so quickly. You don't follow the path others have established. You create new paths. And when those paths don't work, you create different ones. You adapt faster than the problems can keep up. Adaptation isn't always good," the Terminus Collective said. "It can be reckless, dangerous." "It can," Alina agreed. "But right now, you don't need safe and efficient. You need reckless and dangerous. Because the Devourers don't care about your doctrines or your optimization. They just consume. And to beat them, you need people who know how to fight when the rules don't matter anymore." The Primarch was silent for a long moment. "We need to discuss this. The Council will deliberate." As the various species began filing out, the Krell Warmaster approached Colonel Webb. "How did you know to sacrifice that battalion?" The infiltration mission should have failed by all calculations. Webb's expression was grim. I didn't know it would work, but I knew the alternative was worse. Sometimes you have to risk losing everything on a chance, because if you play it safe, you lose anyway. Just slower. The War Master nodded slowly, something like respect in its movements. We may have underestimated you, Webb said simply. You did. The council reconvened 6 hours later, but the atmosphere had changed. The mockery was gone. Instead, there was something else in the chamber. Uncertainty, maybe, or the beginning of respect. Species that had dismissed humanity now studied the three humans with calculating eyes. The Terminus Collective spoke first, its chorus of voices careful and measured. We have analyzed the simulation 7,312 times. From every angle, using every analytical framework available to us, we find the human victory statistically improbable, but tactically sound. Their approach violates established doctrine, but achieves objectives through unconventional means. Unconventional is a polite word for it, the Krell War Master said. The massive being had remained in the chamber, apparently unable to stop reviewing the tactical displays. You fought like the rules didn't exist. Like efficiency and resource preservation meant nothing. Because in a real fight for survival, they don't mean anything, Colonel Webb said. He stood at ease, but his eyes were alert. You fight to win. Period. Everything else is secondary. The Primarch's energy form pulsed slowly. The simulation demonstrated tactical creativity. However, this council must understand why humanity thinks so differently from established galactic norms. It is not enough to show us you can win war games. We need to understand your philosophy. Why you fight the way you do. Dr. Tanaka stepped forward, tablet in hand. She had spent the break preparing a presentation. Now she pulled up comparative data across the holographic displays. The answer is in your own histories. All of you. Every species here has optimized themselves over thousands of years. You've removed redundancy. You've eliminated what you consider wasteful emotion. You've streamlined your decision-making processes. You've become efficient. She showed graphs, charts, patterns spanning millennia. The Zarthon made themselves beings of pure energy to eliminate physical limitations. The Krell engineered their biology to be perfectly logical and remove emotional bias. The ether merged their consciousness to achieve perfect coordination. The Terminus became a collective mind for maximum computational power. Every species here has shaped themselves into what they considered perfect, and this is wrong. The ether chorus asked, their voices harmonizing in genuine curiosity. It's not wrong, Tanaka said carefully, but it has a cost. You've become predictable. Your military engagements for the past 3,000 years follow mathematical patterns, not because you're unimaginative, but because you've optimized for efficiency so completely that you always choose the most logical approach, which means your enemies can predict you. She pulled up more data. Humanity hasn't had time for that optimization. We're still evolving, still changing, still learning. Every generation of humans faces new problems and develops new solutions. We haven't calcified into a single way of thinking because we're too busy surviving to commit to one approach. The Terminus Collective processed this. You are saying your weakness is your strength. That being unoptimized gives you an advantage. In a stable environment, optimization is perfect, Lieutenant Morrison said. The young officer had been quiet until now. But environments change, and when they change fast, the species that survive aren't the most optimized. They're the most adaptable. It's basic evolution. The specialists thrive until the environment shifts. Then the generalists take over because they can adjust. Humanity's primitive emotional responses are actually survival traits, Tanaka continued. You dismiss our emotions as inefficient, but they drive us to do things pure logic wouldn't permit. A parent defending their child doesn't calculate odds. They fight anyway. A soldier covering a retreat doesn't optimize resource allocation. They sacrifice themselves anyway. Our emotions override our logic when survival demands it. The ether chorus floated closer. But emotions lead to mistakes. Two poor decisions. We evolved past them to avoid those errors. Lena spoke up from her position. May I share something personal? Without waiting for permission, she pulled up images. Her daughter. Smiling, playing, living. Then later images. Hospital beds. The plague years. This is Maria, my daughter. She died during the Cascade Plague. She was 7 years old. Even species without comparable family structures seemed to sense the weight of the moment. When she died, I felt rage, Elena said quietly. Grief, despair, pure, inefficient emotion. Logic said the plague couldn't be stopped. Models predicted 98% mortality. The rational thing to do was focus on preserving what we could. Documenting our species before we went extinct, making our end meaningful. She paused. But I didn't do the logical thing. I went back to the lab. I worked until I collapsed. I tried things that shouldn't have worked. I broke protocols. I ignored safety regulations. I was angry at the universe for taking my child, and I channeled that rage into finding a cure. She looked around the chamber. My team developed one of 3 vaccine components that stopped the plague. Not because we were smarter than other teams, but because we were emotionally compromised. We cared too much to give up. We loved people who were dying, so we did impossible things to save them. My emotion, my primitive grief and rage saved 2 billion lives. The silence stretched. Finally, the Valkyrie observer spoke. This is the truth the Council needs to hear. The younger races possess something we have lost or suppressed. The desperation that drives innovation. The emotion that overrides calculation. The willingness to try impossible things because the alternative is unacceptable. We don't need those things, the Primarch said, but its voice lacked conviction. We have achieved stability, peace, prosperity, Evelina agreed. And that's exactly the problem. You've been comfortable for so long that you've forgotten how to be desperate. The Devourers don't care about your comfort. They don't negotiate. They don't calculate optimal strategies. They just consume. And to fight them, you need people who remember what desperation feels like.
Ow.
The Krell War Master shifted its massive form. The human speaks truth. In the simulation, when they sacrificed that battalion, it was not a calculated risk. It was desperation. They needed to win, so they tried something that shouldn't have worked. And it did work, because they committed fully to it. We would have calculated the odds and decided against that move. Exactly, Webb said. You would have played it safe and lost. We risked everything and won. That's the difference. You calculate. We commit. The Valkyrie observer turned to address the full council. It is time I reveal the complete truth about the Devourers. The detection arrays have been monitoring for 20 years. The threat is real. The timeline is 50 years, perhaps less. Our military analysts have been developing defense strategies in secret. The observer paused. Our best projections, as I mentioned before, give us 12% survival probability. And humanity's projections give 3%, the Terminus Collective said. Why are the humans more pessimistic than our own analysis? Because we don't trust that you'll adapt fast enough, Tanaka said bluntly. Your society is built on consensus and careful deliberation. You take decades to change policies. You form committees and run studies and build consensus before acting. It's admirable. It's stable. And it will get you killed when the Devourers arrive. She pulled up more data. We've modeled how the Council responds to crises. You're reactive, not proactive. You wait until you have complete information before committing to action. That works when you have time. You won't have time with the Devourers, and humanity would be different. The Primarch challenged. Humanity would panic, Alina said flatly. We'd argue and fight. We'd make mistakes. We'd probably waste the first few months on bad ideas and political infighting. We're not perfect. But then we'd adapt. Someone would try something crazy. It would either work or fail. If it worked, we'd do more of it. If it failed, we'd try something else. We'd iterate rapidly. We'd break things and rebuild them. We'd be messy and chaotic and absolutely desperate to survive. She pulled up simulation data. Your 12% assumes perfect coordination and optimal resource use. It assumes you'll implement the best strategies and adapt when needed. But your own history shows you don't adapt quickly. You're too big, too complex, too committed to consensus. By the time you agree on a strategy, the situation will have changed. And the 3%? The Ether Chorus asked. That's our realistic assessment based on how you actually behave, not how you theoretically could behave, Morrison said. It accounts for bureaucratic delays, political conflicts, resistance to change, and the time required to reach consensus. 3% is what happens if you face the Devourers with your current structure and decision-making processes. However, Alina said, and everyone focused on her, we ran another scenario. One where humanity is involved from the beginning, where we're not just members, but active participants in military planning, where our approach influences council strategy, where you let us push you to try things outside your comfort zone. And, the Primarch asked, though its energy form suggested it already suspected the answer. 37%, Alina said. Still not great odds. Still likely we all die. But it's the difference between nearly impossible and actually possible. And that difference exists because of one thing: we make you uncomfortable. We force you to consider options you would normally dismiss. We push you to move faster than you want to. We bring chaos into your order. And in a fight for survival, that chaos might be exactly what saves us all. The Velkari observer nodded slowly. The young species brings the desperation that drives innovation. The old species brings the knowledge and resources to make that innovation effective. Together, we have a chance. Separated, we die. But can we trust them? A voice called from the observers. Humans are violent, emotional, unpredictable. What stops them from becoming a threat themselves? Alina smiled, and it was a tired expression. The same thing that stopped us from destroying ourselves during the plague. We're violent, yes, but we're not stupid. We know cooperation is the only way forward. We know we need you as much as you need us. She paused. But make no mistake, if the Council rejects us, humanity will still prepare. We'll fortify our system. We'll build our fleets. We'll train our people. And when the Devourers come, we'll fight. Alone if we have to, because that's what we do. We survive. The Primarch's energy form flared bright, his colors shifting rapidly through patterns that suggested deep thought or perhaps internal conflict. When it finally spoke, its voice carried the weight of ancient authority. The Council has heard humanity's arguments. We have seen their tactical demonstration. We have reviewed their analysis. The energy being paused. However, this Council was built on principles of wisdom, stability, and careful consideration. We do not make decisions based on fear or desperation. Alina felt something cold settle in her stomach. She recognized the tone. She had heard it before in diplomatic sessions. The careful language that preceded rejection. Humanity's assessment of our capabilities may have merit, the Primarch continued. But to suggest that a species of merely 2 centuries could be essential to civilizations spanning millennia is, ultimately, arrogance. Your simulation victory was impressive, but proves only tactical creativity, not strategic wisdom. Your emotional approach may drive short-term innovation, but lacks the stability required for long-term planning. The Krell Warmaster shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. The Ether Chorus remained silent. Even species that had seemed swayed by humanity's demonstration now held back, unwilling to contradict the Primarch's judgment. Therefore, the Primarch announced, the Council's decision stands. Humanity's petition for membership is denied. You may apply again in 500 years. Once your species has matured and developed the stability required for participation in galactic governance. Alina stood very still. She didn't argue, didn't plead, didn't show anger or disappointment. She simply nodded once, then turned and walked toward the exit. Colonel Webb, Dr. Tanaka, and Lieutenant Morrison followed her without a word. Ambassador Vasquez, the Primarch called out. Do you have nothing more to say? Alina stopped at the doorway but didn't turn around. What would you like me to say? That you're making a mistake? You already know that. That you need us? I've already proven it. That you're choosing pride over survival? That's obvious to everyone in this chamber. She glanced back over her shoulder. No, I don't have anything more to say. You've made your decision. Now, I need to go home and make mine. And what decision is that? The Velkari observer asked quietly. Now Alina turned fully around. Her expression was calm, but something burned in her eyes. The decision about how humanity will prepare for the Devourers? Alone. Alone, the Primarch said. You would refuse to coordinate with the Council. You would deny us your tactical insights out of spite. Spite. Alina laughed, and it was not a pleasant sound. No, we're refusing to coordinate because you've made it clear you don't want our help. You want us to sit on the sidelines for 500 years while you handle things your way? So that's exactly what we'll do. We'll handle things our way. She walked back to the center platform, and now there was something different in her posture. The diplomat was gone. What stood there now was something harder. Something that had survived a plague that killed billions. Something that had clawed its way back from the edge of extinction. Let me tell you what's going to happen, Alina said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent chamber. Humanity will go home. We'll fortify our system. We'll build defensive stations around every planet, every colony, every installation. We'll conscript every able-bodied person into military training. We'll convert our industrial capacity to weapons production. We'll dig bunkers deep enough to survive planetary bombardment. We'll prepare for the worst-case scenario and then prepare for something worse than that. That is your right, the Primarch said. But it changes nothing. The Devourers will sweep through this galaxy, and one fortified system will not stop them. You're right, Alina agreed. One system won't stop them, but one system might survive them. And that's the difference between us. You're planning to win. We're planning to survive. Because if there's one thing humanity knows how to do, it's survive the unsurvivable. She gestured at the holographic displays. You think we're arrogant? You think we overestimate ourselves? Let me tell you what we learned from the plague. We learned that when extinction comes, logic abandons you. Efficiency fails you. Optimization becomes meaningless. All that matters is the will to keep fighting when every rational reason to fight is gone. This is emotion speaking, not reason, the Terminus Collective said. Us, Alina said simply. It is. Because emotion is what keeps you alive when reason says you're already dead. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes or equivalents of every species present. My daughter died in my arms. I held her while the fever consumed her. Logic said I should prepare for my own death. Emotion said I should fight. I chose emotion. And because I chose emotion, 2 billion people lived. She pulled up images on the display. Human colonies. Children playing. Cities rebuilt. This is what emotion creates. This is what desperation achieves. This is what you get when a species refuses to accept that extinction is logical or reasonable or inevitable. And when the Devourers come, Alina continued, her voice dropping to something quieter, but somehow more intense. And they break through your perfect defenses and your optimized strategies and your carefully calculated resource allocations. When they shatter your fleets and burn your worlds and consume everything you've built over thousands of years, when your 12% becomes 0% because you were too proud to accept help from a young, primitive, emotional species. She paused, letting the silence stretch. Humanity will still be fighting. In our tunnels, in our bunkers, in the ruins of our colonies. We'll fight with advanced weapons until they're gone, then with primitive weapons, then with rocks, then with our bare hands. And maybe we'll lose anyway. Maybe the Devourers will kill every last human. But we won't make it easy. We won't make it clean. And we won't surrender. This is madness, the Primarch said, but its voice was uncertain. No, the Velkari observer said softly. This is survival instinct. Raw and unfiltered. We have forgotten what it looks like because we have not needed it for so long. But the human is right. When all else fails, this is what remains. The refusal to quit, the determination to fight when fighting seems pointless. This is what carried their species through the plague. This is what will carry them through the Devourers. Lena's expression softened slightly. I'm not trying to threaten you or manipulate you. I'm just telling you the truth. Humanity doesn't need the Council to survive. We'd prefer to work with you. It would give us all better odds. But we've survived worse things than being alone. She started walking toward the exit again. So thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to our petition, and good luck with the Devourers. You're going to need it. Wait, the voice was the Krell War Master. The massive being had been silent for a long time, but now it moved forward. Primarch, I must speak, War Master. This decision is final. No, the Krell said, and there was steel in its voice. You will hear me. I have fought for 300 years. I have studied warfare longer than some species in this chamber have existed. And I am telling you, as your military advisor, that the human is correct. The chamber erupted in shocked murmuring. The Krell continued, its voice cutting through the noise. I reviewed the simulation not 7,000 times, but 70,000 times. I analyzed every move, every decision, every tactical choice the humans made, and I understand now what they were showing us. They were showing us that all our accumulated knowledge, all our optimized strategies, all our careful planning means nothing if we are predictable. The War Master turned to the other species. The Devourers destroyed 42 species 7,000 years ago, species with more technology than we have now, species that followed proper military doctrine, species that fought logically and efficiently, and they all died. Because the Devourers do not care about logic. They do not follow rules. They simply consume. And to fight them, we need allies who do not follow rules either. But humans are dangerous, another species protested. Unpredictable. What if they turn on us? Colonel Webb spoke up then, his voice rough with old battles and older pain. Let me tell you something about humans. We fight when we're threatened. We fight when our people are in danger. We fight when we need to survive. But we also protect. We also build. We also create. He gestured at the data, showing human history. Yes, we've had wars. But we've also had peace. We've built civilizations. We've made art and music and literature. We've explored and learned and grown. We're capable of violence, Dr. Tanaka added. But we're also capable of cooperation. During the plague, humans helped each other. Strangers risked their lives to save strangers. Communities shared resources when resources were scarce. We didn't descend into chaos. We came together. You want to guarantee that we won't become a threat? Alina asked. I can't give you that. Nobody can guarantee the future. But I can tell you this. Humanity wants to survive. And we know we can't survive alone in the long term. We need allies. We need trade. We need knowledge exchange. We need the galaxy to be stable and prosperous, because that's the kind of place where humans thrive. She looked directly at the Primarch. But more than that, we need purpose. Right now, preparing for the Devourers gives us purpose. Fighting alongside the Council would give us purpose. Being rejected and going home alone? That just makes us desperate. And desperate humans are exactly as dangerous as you think they are. The Velkari observer stood and addressed the Primarch directly. I invoke the ancient right. As an observer, I call for immediate revote on humanity's petition. This decision will affect galactic survival. It cannot be made hastily or based on pride. The Primarch's energy form pulsed with agitation, but the ancient right could not be denied. Very well. Council members, cast your votes. Should humanity be granted provisional membership with full voting rights on defense matters? The vote took 3 hours. Species caucused, debated, argued. Alina and her team waited in silence. Webb's expression was unreadable. Tanaka looked nervous. Morrison checked his tablet constantly. Alina just stood calmly, as if the outcome didn't matter to her at all. Finally, the Primarch returned. Its energy form had dimmed slightly, a sign of concession among the Zarthon. The vote is complete. By a margin of 28 to 19, humanity is granted provisional council membership. You will have full voting rights on all Matters of galactic defense. You will have access to Council military resources and intelligence. You will participate in all planning for the Devourer threat. Alina nodded once. Thank you. When do we start? Immediately, the Velkari observer said. We have 50 years to prepare. We have already wasted too much time. Then let's get to work, Alina said. She pulled up displays, tactical maps, resource allocations. First, we need to review your current defensive posture. Based on what I've seen, you're positioned entirely wrong. You're defending the wrong places, with the wrong assets, using the wrong strategies. The Krell War Master moved closer, studying the maps. What would you suggest? Everything different, Colonel Webb said, a slight smile on his weathered face. We need to assume the Devourers will do exactly what we wouldn't expect. So we prepare for the unexpected. We plan for chaos. We embrace the fact that everything will go wrong and prepare to adapt when it does. The ether chorus floated nearby. This will be difficult for us. Our nature is to seek order and coordination. Good, Tanaka said. Difficult is good. If it's easy for us, it'll be easy for the Devourers. We need to make everything hard. Hard for us, impossible for them. As the various species began gathering around the displays, asking questions, offering input, suggesting modifications, the Primarch approached Alina. You knew we would change our vote. No, Alina said honestly. I hoped you would, but I meant every word I said. If you had maintained your rejection, humanity would have prepared alone. We've done it before. We could do it again. And the galaxy would have fallen, the Primarch said quietly. Probably Alina agreed. But humanity would have survived. Diminished, wounded, scattered, but alive. Because that's what we do. She looked at the alien being. You asked earlier why humanity moves with such urgency. Now you know. Because we've learned that the universe doesn't wait for you to be ready. Threats don't care if you need more time to prepare. Extinction doesn't negotiate. So we move fast, we adapt quickly, and we never, ever assume we're safe. The Primarch's energy form pulsed in what might have been respect. We have much to learn from each other, yes, Alina said. You can teach us patience and strategic thinking. We can teach you desperation and adaptation. Together, maybe we have a chance. Across the chamber, the Krell War Master leaned over to the ether chorus. We may have just unleashed something terrifying on the galaxy. The chorus's harmonized voices carried a note of amusement. Better they are terrifying to our enemies than to us. In the corner, Colonel Webb watched the various species beginning to work together. He thought about the simulation, about the sacrifice battalion, about all the times humanity had risked everything on desperate chances. He thought about Elena's daughter, about the billions who died in the plague, about all the humans who had fought and died to give their species a future, and he smiled. Because the galaxy had no idea what was coming. The Devourers thought they were facing the same civilized, predictable species they had fought before. They didn't know that this time, the galaxy had humanity. This time, the galaxy had desperation, emotion, and the willingness to do impossible things. This time, the galaxy had a chance. Not a good chance, but a chance. And for humanity, that had always been enough.